what's up guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then welcome to our little corner of the internet. Today we're going to be watching a video titled How I See the US After Living in Europe for 6 years. Now this is gonna be interesting because usually it would be the other way around. Europeans usually want to go to America, but she's moved from America to Europe, so I really want to hear out her perspective. So yeah, let's see what this video is about.
If you grow up in the United States, you're taught a very specific story. That it's the best country in the world, that it has the most freedom, the most opportunity, that everyone wants to move here, and that if life feels hard, it's usually a personal problem and not a systemic one. And because of this, the assumption is simple. If you ever leave the US and don't come back, it must be because you failed, or you couldn't handle it, or you're chasing something unrealistic. But here's the part that most people don't realize. You don't fully understand how American life feels until you live somewhere that runs on a completely different baseline. Not necessarily better, just different enough that it exposes all the stresses that you were subconsciously carrying. It's about the everyday differences that shape your stress levels, your nervous system, and what we come to accept as normal without ever questioning it. Today's video is about how living abroad changed the way that I see the US and why I don't count on ever moving back. And if life in the US has ever felt heavy, even when you were doing everything right, this video will probably explain why. For context, I moved to France in 2019.
It's very, very hard to kind of, now that I know the scale of America, it's very hard to listen to opinions about America, since depending on where you live in America, it's so different. I mean, you could live in Hawaii, you could live in Puerto Rico, and it's completely different than New York or LA, or you could be in Michigan, and that's completely different to Texas. So I find it very hard to believe, after watching so many videos, that there wouldn't be a place for everyone inside the United States, or a place that everyone would love, because they're all so different. But
for what was supposed to be just a 1-year exchange. It was a 1-year live-in nannying job in Paris that turned into another year, and then 3 more. And now, 6 years later, I've realized that I'm not still here because I planned it this way. I'm still here because every year, going back to the US just made less and less sense for me. One of the biggest shifts I've noticed since leaving the US is that I'm not constantly on guard anymore. And what's wild is I didn't even realize how much energy this was taking until it just stopped. In the US, safety isn't really something you feel, it's something that you constantly have to manage.
This is bull. No, I'm kidding. But this is something that depends, because girl, where I live, especially when I go out at night, I mean today, I don't even know, can I even talk about things like this on YouTube? I was walking on the street with my dog because I was taking her out, and there was a guy walking towards me at this, there's a street where there's no people, where I take my dog because my dog is scared of everyone. And he was walking towards me, and I just looked at him because, he was walking towards me. And then I looked down, and at the end, I realized that he had red splatters on his hoodie and on the sleeves. And when I walked past, I just looked back because I was like, what? What did I just see? And he looked back at me and gave me a death stare. He literally looked back at me like this. And I went, So, and also every time I go out with my dog, especially at night, I need to be constantly on alert. I'm constantly scared. Not scared necessarily, but constantly alert and nervous, and having to look back and having to see, okay, this car is coming this way. If I go with my dog on this street, the car can't follow me there. Even if they didn't follow you, but still, you have to be alert all the time, So It depends. It depends where you live, and I think in America it's the same. I mean, if you live in a very peaceful neighborhood, I doubt that people feel unsafe. Um, and also it depends on the city, the state, and all of that. And so is in Europe as well. I mean, there's cities that are less or are calmer, and there's cities and there's hoods or neighborhoods that are not so calm. And I unfortunately live in one of them.
Scan exits when you walk into a bar. You clock who's around you in a movie theater. You're making a million little decisions all day. Where you park, what time to stop and get gas,
Yes.
what neighborhoods you avoid. And none of
Yes.
this feels dramatic when you're living there. It feels responsible. It feels like you're just being smart. But being this hyper aware all the time means that your body never fully relaxes. And over time, that becomes your baseline. A constant low level bracing everywhere. And the scary part is,
And if she lives in Paris, I don't know if I would feel calm in Paris, girl, but
once you stop living like that, you realize how much of your personality was just coping. I noticed the changes slowly after I moved here. I stopped scanning exits, stopped flinching at loud noises in public, stopped doing that mental, what would I do if rehearsal every time I went out somewhere. And obviously, no place is 100% safe. Every country has its problems. But on a day-to-day basis, I do feel noticeably safer here and when traveling abroad than I ever did in the States. And once I felt that,
I think she should mention where she came from, though.
it made me start questioning what else I'd quietly been accepting as normal. In the US, your job isn't just what you do, it's who you are. One of the first questions you get when you meet someone is, "So what do you do?" And it might seem like an innocent question, but in reality, the subtext of that question really means, how valuable are you? How busy are you? Are you winning? How much money are you making? People flex exhaustion as a personality trait. Everyone has their full-time job and their side hustle. You answer work emails even when you're sick. And in the off chance you do take a vacation, you're still checking Slack the whole time because being unreachable feels risky. And it's not because Americans uniquely are obsessed with work. It's because the stakes are higher. Your health insurance is tied to your job. Your stability is tied to your job. So the idea of work-life balance becomes this cute idea that you're supposed to master inside of a system that punishes you for slowing down. In France, work feels more like a category of life, not the center of your identity. People guard their evenings to spend time with family and friends. Time off isn't a moral failure, it's expected, and being unavailable after work hours is completely normal. And yes, salaries here can be lower, but it's okay, because the pressure is different when life doesn't feel like it's just one paycheck away from collapsing completely. Because one of the biggest sources of the "I can't slow down" mentality connects to the healthcare system.
I like the hustle mentality though. I like it. I don't know. I think that depends on the person. I think Europeans are very, very laid back. It also depends, like Norway, Finland, Sweden. More in the northern countries are more work. They have more work ethic, maybe, or not ethic, but it's the different culture. And then you come down here to Spain or, to Greece, Portugal, Italy, and it definitely is way more laid back. Way more laid back. Like Spanish people will take vacations anytime they can. Literally, every day is a celebration. And they even have their siesta, like from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. All the stores are closed because people need to take a nap. And I'm not even lying. Like, it's every single day from 2 to 5 p.m. All the stores are closed because people are napping and they need that free time, which is kind of cool. But at the same time, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it depends on the person, on how you want to live.
This was one of the most psychologically draining differences that I didn't actually realize until I had left the States. In the US, not only is healthcare extremely expensive, but it's unpredictable. You can do everything right, pay the highest premiums, and still get punished. And guess what this leads to? You hesitate before going to urgent care because you're not sure what it will cost. You pick jobs partly based on the benefits and not actually the job itself. And you stay at a job longer than you should because losing coverage feels terrifying. And even if you pay for insurance, you still don't feel safe because you don't really know what something will cost until after it happens. When I worked in the ER during college, we literally saw so many patients come in via Uber and rideshare while they were in genuinely bad shape. And it's not because they didn't need an ambulance, but it was because they were afraid of the bill. And that's the part that people underestimate. It's not just money, but it's the constant mental load. Sure, the US has access to some of the top doctors and some of the most high-quality advancements in medical technology. But what good is all that if we can't even afford to use it? Living somewhere with a boring but accessible healthcare system really changed my brain. Because when you remove the fear of the bill, you get so much mental space back. And once you feel what life is like without all of that background anxiety, it's really hard to return to a system that makes you negotiate for basic care. And the final piece that makes the idea of moving back to the US feel hard.
I do understand the healthcare part in a way, you know, even if you could have like your own insurance, but I don't know if it's accessible to everyone, so I do understand. I do get that, yeah.
Is community. Because in the US, especially today, connection often becomes something that you have to fight for. In the US, independence is treated like the ultimate virtue. You pull yourself up by your bootstraps, figure it out yourself, don't rely on anyone, and move states for new opportunities if you have to. And all of this sounds great and it sounds empowering until you realize what this actually costs. A big part of community is third spaces, which are essentially places that aren't work and aren't home, but a separate third space where we can gather and be with community. Cafes, parks, neighborhood spots. And in the US, a lot of those places are either disappearing or have become paywalled. You can't just exist somewhere without being expected to spend money. Another reason why it feels hard to maintain community is because as Americans, we're so spread out. Friends move for job opportunities, family lives in different states, and connection becomes something that you have to schedule in advance. And so when connection...
This is something that, again, I don't know, I'm just maybe different, but I do see this in Europe as well. People also like live with their families way longer probably because in Finland, people, it depends. It depends on the part of Europe because in Finland, for example, people move out pretty early at like 16, 18 and start their independent lives. And also my life is a little bit different because since my family is in Finland and I've lived nearly my whole life in Spain, so, you know, I've always been separated from them, and then the rest of my family is in the Republic Dominicans. So I can't really, you know, talk for Europeans, but in Spain, for example, usually people live with their families up to like 30 easily. But I definitely was independent way earlier. I think at 16 I already started kind of to separate from my mom's house. And I do live like in a different city as well. But, you know, it's just I can't really say nothing to that since, you know, my life has been a little different.
Starts to require time, energy, and money, it slowly disappears. In France, and in Paris specifically, proximity does a lot of the work. Paris itself isn't a huge city, but it has a huge population of people, and it's a very walkable city, so you don't have to have a car to get by. And so from walking every day from point A to point B, you're naturally surrounded by so many more people, and you have so many more opportunities for connection than you would in the States. Here, you walk more, you see the same people, you become a regular somewhere, and connection starts to happen naturally through repetition instead of through planning. And that really does change everything.
This is true, though. You can walk everywhere. And, you know, there's a lot of parks, a lot of outside areas, a lot of community areas and things like that.
Because building community stops being a personal project and just becomes a byproduct of how life here is structured. When you live somewhere long enough, something subtle happens. Not overnight and not necessarily because you're trying to change. Your body just adapts to a different baseline. You stop bracing, you stop rushing, rest stops feeling like failure, safety stops feeling conditional, healthcare there stops feeling like a gamble. And once your body learns that version of normal, it doesn't forget it. And that's the part a lot of people miss when they ask why someone wouldn't move back. It's not rejection or resentment, and it's not about hating where you come from. It's about realizing that once you experience a way of living that actually lets you breathe, it becomes very hard to choose a life that doesn't.
That was a nice video. It was a nice video, but very different from what we've seen. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. And thank you for joining me for this video. I hope you liked it. Please leave a like. Subscribe if you haven't yet. We are so close to 100,000 subscribers. I can't believe it. Guys, I love you. Thank you. I'm gonna make a video about it shortly when we hit it, but I just wanted to say already, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.